This video is sponsored by Movement for Life Physical Therapy. ADCC West Coast Trials Women's 65 kilogram division. You can see we are immediately starting to hand fight for good head positioning and good hand positioning. The ADCC rule set really rewards pushing the action, so we're both trying to look for that dominant position so that we can start to work for our takedowns. Here we are starting to tie up in that collar tie position. She's looking to get to that inside space and is able to push me off. We're back to hand fighting. Here you can see she's kind of faking some shots, but I'm not really biting on any of those because she's not really shooting in either. I go back to that inside collar tie position, and we are both in this collar tie fighting for that better positioning, that inside positioning. I'm able to start to switch to my underhooks. I'm able to get my double underhooks here. She's trying to keep my hips away so that I'm not able to get in close and start to go in for my trips and my throws. I'm starting to kind of feel out the positioning of her feet and her weight. And as soon as I'm able to get her driving really hard into me, that's where I'm able to drop in for my little trip. She almost comes up on top of me, but I'm able to peek out and start to come around onto her back. But unfortunately, I made a mistake and I left my left leg in between her legs, which allows her to try to invert for this leg lock position. We land in kind of this 50-50 position. She is immediately looking for the bite on the heel hook, and I am looking to tuck my heel and keep myself from getting heel hooked. She's doing a pretty good job of digging for the heel, but because I'm sitting up, she doesn't have a lot of extension on the leg lock position, so I'm not in too terribly much danger here. Here I'm hiding my heel. You can see she's digging for it, but I'm keeping it pretty well positioned against the mat to prevent her from being able to start to rotate it. I am grabbing onto her head and continuing to hide my heel to avoid letting her get that little bite on the heel and start her rotation. We're hand fighting here. I'm trying to keep her hands busy while also trying to stay in this stacked position and keep my heel tucked, while also trying to see if I can unlock my legs and try to start to come up in this position and get on top. We continue to hand fight in this position. She's still looking for that bite and now is trying to unwind my legs and get on that heel. But again, I'm doing a good job of keeping it tucked. This is probably where I was in the most danger with this, but even so, I'm able to start to come up and start to stack her a little bit and prevent her from getting that rotation on the heel. Here she starts to switch my leg across her body to the DOA position instead of 50-50, which allows me to get a better positioning to come up and stack her. And I am grabbing onto her hips and keeping my heel tucked to prevent her from getting that rotation. And from here, she decides to just come up and go to the top position. I am starting to go in on my own leg lock position, trying to come underneath her and sweep her back over. She's doing a good job of keeping heavy pressure on top of me to where it is difficult for me to start to invert. You can see my hips are starting to come up, and I am trying to come underneath her to try to get that position and start to flatten her back out and get to the leg lock position. She's doing a really good job of stacking me and keeping heavy top pressure, which is making it really, really difficult for me to try to get the leverage to sweep her over. And you can see she's doing the same thing that I was doing a few minutes ago, where she's really pulling on and attacking at my head to make it difficult for me to sweep her. It's a little bit difficult to see from this angle, but I'm trying to take my right leg and wedge it underneath her hips and between her legs so that I can transition to my false sweep position and start to sweep her over into the saddle. She keeps trying to stack me, trying to pressure me while I am trying to sit my hips out and start to get enough leverage to where I can sweep her over. I'm able to get under the leg, start to sit my hips out, and here I start to come inverted and start to take that leg over to try to transition to the saddle position. Here, I'm trying to keep that underhook grip on the leg and use it to pry it free and try to attack from my heel hook. But again, she starts to come up and try to stack me. Sorry for the weird camera work there. Here, she is able to pry her leg out of the saddle position, and I kind of wind up in this weird stacked up leg lock position. From here, I'm trying to use my legs to sweep her over, but she's doing a really good job of pressuring super heavy and cross facing me super hard. I still have the underhook on the leg, so I'm trying with all my might to try to sweep her over, but I'm just not quite able to get the angle. At this point, I know the time is running pretty low, and I really don't want to let her get a pass to get points because as of right now, there's no points scored on the board. Here, she's trying to muffler me, and I'm like, no. I think if I'd had a little bit more time, I could have maybe wedged my hips up underneath her a little bit more and started to attack down at the ankle and started to invert for a knee bar. But like I said, she's just doing a really good job of pressuring and cross facing me here, and it's making it very slow going. So here the time just runs out. And since no points were scored, we are now in overtime. He calls us back to the middle and resets us pretty immediately and just immediately starts the overtime. So even though we just grappled a full match, we're immediately in on the overtime. We are doing our best to fight for good hand positioning, good head positioning, trying to work for our takedowns. She is kind of hand fighting with me. We're tied up. She tries to snap me down, but I'm able to keep my head positioning good, start driving her backwards, but she starts to circle back around towards the middle and is trying to pop up my elbow to go for a duck under. I try to snap her down. She drives me forward. I circle back around and we continue to circle back towards the middle, continue to hand fight. I'm fighting for my underhooks and I drive her off the edge. So the referee sets us in the same position. I have my underhooks, which is great. She is trying to create space though to prevent me from being able to try to take her down. I try to go for a little trip. I'm almost able to get it, but not quite. I wind up driving her forward. She circles. She's doing a good job of maintaining space and we're back to hand fighting. He resets us back in the middle. Because I'm used to the UWW rule set where you can get points for push-outs, I have a tendency to keep driving her backwards, which winds up playing a factor later into the judge's decision because it appears that I'm always pushing the action and always pressing forward with my takedowns, and that helps me later on. We continue to circle, continue to hand fight. She likes this collar tie position, tries to snap me down. I get an overhook on her arm. I'm trying to circle and start to work for my takedown. She's trying to create space because she doesn't like that underhook. We're fighting for good head positioning. She starts to drive me backwards, and we're back to hand fighting. She's trying to go for that 2-on-1 on my wrist. We continue to hand fight, head fight. I'm going for that collar tie. She's trying to drive me off. We continue to fight for that inside positioning, both with our head and with our hands. She reaches down for my leg for a single leg, but I'm able to keep her at bay. She's trying to snap me down and go in for that single leg, but I'm doing a good job of keeping my balance and keeping my legs away from her. Here, I know that the time is starting to run short, so I just shoot in on a single leg, and she sprawls on me. She's trying to spin to take my back, but I'm staying tight on that single leg. This, again, is important later because even though this turns into a failed shot, I pushed the action by shooting in. So in the judge's eyes, I'm pushing the action. The ADCC rule set is very much about who is pushing the action. She does not get her hooks in, so she's not able to get her points for that, and she also is not able to get to side control to flatten me out, and I'm able to maintain my half guard. So even though this does not work out in my favor and I'm kind of stuck in half guard here, continuing to try to get out from under her, I pushed the action by initiating a takedown, which is a big factor in the decision making. I'm not exactly sure what happens here with the camera, but I did wind up winning by decision. Here is a clip of me getting my hand raised from the official feed. I look very confused because I didn't know how the rules worked. All right, match number 2. You can kind of tell right out the gate I'm a little bit more scattered in this match than I was in the first match. I think because of all the confusion in the first match, if I didn't really understand how the overtime worked, I I didn't have a ton of time in between that match and this match. I just was a little bit scatterbrained. Didn't really pull myself together as much as I would have liked. My hand fighting is not bad. Like, it's definitely still way better than it used to be. It's just not as intentional and focused as it was in the first match, and I'm kind of biting on things that maybe I shouldn't be. We continue to hand fight and head position. She goes for a little arm drag, but I'm able to circle around. She's trying to hit this Russian, but I am fighting her on that as well, fighting for that inside space collar tie. We weave and pommel back and forth. Sorry for the weird camera work there. She tries to arm drag again, but I'm too quick. We tie up in this collar tie position. We are both looking to control that inside space. She's kind of looking for a duck under here, while I'm looking to get her to push her weight into me so that I can start to go for that same little trip that I went for in the first match. The ref resets us in the middle because we kind of went out of bounds off of the mat, and we are back to hand fighting. I'm looking for that collar tie, as is she. She's still kind of looking for that duck under. I'm trying to drive into her to get her to put her weight into me. We continue to hand fight and fight for good hand positioning and good head positioning. She tries to snap me down, but is not able to. We kind of are moving back and forth. She again tries to snap me down, but I'm able to stay up. I'm weaving for that inside position. She tries to go for the Russian. And then here, the ref stops the match and tells us that we both need to create more action. So we go back to fighting. We go back to our hand fighting positions, and here she decides to pull guard. It's a good guard pull. She goes to butterfly guard and secures her underhooks so that she is able to wrap up her closed guard. She's doing a really good job here of keeping my posture broken down and trying to cut her hips, but I am keeping my hips squared up with her hips. And here the ref is taking note of the position and resetting us back in the middle because we kind of got too close over to the table. So he resets us back in that closed guard position with the same hand positioning, and we go back to fighting. She is trying to push on my hips and cut her hips on an angle to start to attack for sweeps and submissions, whereas I am trying to keep my hips squared up with her. She's also doing a good job of keeping my posture broken down and making it difficult for me to posture up to try to break her guard. Here she starts to try to walk her feet up to get to rubber guard. She's trying to kind of get to her hip, and here she establishes that rubber guard, but I am driving in to her. Generally, when you're defending rubber guard, you want to drive into the side that they have the rubber guard on. Rubber guard doesn't require as much flexibility as you would think unless somebody is driving in the way that I'm driving in, because it puts a lot of pressure on their hip. If she's able to go to her other hip, it's far easier for her to maintain this rubber guard, whereas when I'm driving into the side that the rubber guard is on, it makes it a lot more of a flexibility issue. Now, she is very flexible, so it's not impossible for her to hold this rubber guard position, but it makes it significantly more uncomfortable. Here, I'm starting to pressure into her armpits with my hands and starting to try to stand up to break open this lock. She starts to cut around for her sweep, and I am trying to pressure in and cut my hips to try to break open the guard. Here is where I think I made my mistake in this match, is that as opposed to going for a standing up guard pass, I went for a low, heavy pressure pass. So what I'm trying to do is pressure into her upper body while I cut my hips around to break the guard open. But she's very flexible, so it's difficult for me to get past that hook. And if you don't really know what I'm doing, it kind of looks like she's trying to sweep me. I square back up with her hips and start to posture up. But because she's doing such a good job of keeping my posture broken down, here I start to posture up, I start to stand, and she goes back to her double unders. But because she's doing such a good job of keeping my posture broken down, at the time, it seemed like it made more sense to just go for this heavy pressure hip cutting guard pass. But I think Later on in the judges' eyes, they thought that I was just stalling. I was not stalling. I was trying to pass. It just didn't really look like it. This is also a pass that I am better at now, and at the time had only just learned like a month or two ago, so I'm not really sure why I decided that ADCC trials was the time to try it out, but you know what? You live and you learn. Here, she's doing a good job of keeping my posture broken down. She's trying to switch back to that rubber guard again. Here, she kind of switches back into it. But I've got pretty good rubber guard defense, so I didn't really feel like I was in any danger here. I'm keeping her pretty flat and square. I start to posture back up to try to stand for one of my standing passes, but she is doing a good job of keeping me broken down. I'm going for bicep control, starting to look for my stance. She starts to look for, I'm not sure if she was looking for a Kimura or guillotine there or what, but she just breaks my posture back down, starts to walk back up for that rubber guard. And again, I am looking to posture back up. I'm starting to stand. I'm posting my hands in her biceps to create space, and the match ends. I don't know why my cameraman is filming the back of this lady's head, but whatever. They reset us back in the middle, and overtime starts immediately. We immediately get into our hand fighting. I am immediately on the hunt because I want to make sure that I am scoring in this overtime if I can. I'm trying to back her up, and from here I'm getting her to pressure her weight into me. I hit this little trip and I try to come up with it, but I'm not able to jump on that snap down. We go back to our hand fighting and looking for that inside space, looking for that pressure. We tie up in this collar tie position, moving back and forth. Again, I'm trying to get her weight pressured into me. So I'm pressuring her backwards, driving, and then I hit that little trip again, but he resets us back in the middle pretty much immediately. He resets us back in the middle, and we immediately go back to our hand fighting. We are both looking for that inside positioning. We collar tie back up, and I'm driving her once again backwards, trying to get it in the judge's mind that I am the one creating action. And I'm also trying to look for those little trips that I've been hitting because she keeps letting me hit them. I'm being aggressive with my hand fighting. He resets us back in the middle, and we go back to our hand fighting. I'm looking for that inside space. We collar tie back up. I'm driving her backwards. We start to circle. Again, I'm trying to get her to put her weight pressuring into me. And here I'm able to again hit that little trip, but she pops back up and he resets us back into the middle. I don't remember why he pauses us here and goes over the desk. But after he goes over and talks to the judges, he does give my opponent a stalling warning because she's not being nearly as active as I am. We go back to our hand fighting. She's being a little more aggressive with her hand fighting now, trying to look for those arm drags. We are both looking for that inside position. She tries to rush in me, but I'm able to defend. We keep hand fighting, looking for that inside positioning. We're both getting pretty tired at this point, but we are both fighting through, pushing through, trying to get to that score. As of right now, nobody has scored still, so we are both looking to try to finish a takedown and get some points on the board so that it doesn't have to go to judge's decision. Here we are tied up again. I'm driving her backwards. And then I shoot because the time is really low. Sorry, that lady's head got in the way. She does a good sprawl here. I shot in because I wanted to make something happen. And the time was running out, and so it was just kind of a last-ditch attempt. But like I said, she had a good sprawl. I don't know why he's not resetting us here. Oh, there he goes. He resets us back in the middle in that same front headlock position. He's making sure that he knows exactly where everything is so that he can reset us exactly in that same position. So you can see we've got 25 seconds left, and we're both trying to get some points on the board so it doesn't have to go to judge's decision. He resets us, and we're back to fighting. I am trying to fight her hands and prevent her from being able to get to my back or flatten me out to try to score. and she is trying to spin and take my back. You can see I'm kind of trying to reach for that single leg a little bit, but she's doing a good job keeping her hips back. She goes to spin. She's trying to get that hook in. She doesn't have either one in, but the time runs out and nobody has scored, which means, ooh, hello, which means that it is going to go to the judge's decision. Unfortunately, this time the judge's decision did not go my way, and my opponent won. This was a really close match. I feel like it could have gone either way. I felt like the first match also could have gone either way, honestly. So you win some, you lose some. I definitely learned about the rule set. I feel like the rule set, when I've studied it online, wasn't as clear as maybe it could have been. And so now that I've competed under this rule set, I feel like I would do better next time. And I also just feel like as my confidence grows, I'll be able to perform better and make better decisions in the moment. And yeah, thanks for watching. More matches will be up soon, so subscribe.